Hi there, and thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to sit with us. What you will be listening to today is a recording of TalentMap's monthly webinar on job crafting. And I'm just going to dive right into it today and not waste too much of your time up front. But what I'd like to do is just start by introducing our topic for today, which is job crafting. And this is something that we received in feedback to be a really good topic to bring forward for our monthly webinar, and something that people are really starting to get into. And it's a new topic that is just circling around the HR sector. And one of the things that we are going to be talking about today in regards to some of the research that's been done within the University of Michigan. And just to introduce what job crafting is to some of you that don't know, job crafting is a top-down exercise which involves management and their employees to change and craft the employees' jobs to better suit some of the things that are going to get the most out of them in regards to engagement. And I'm going to let Sean, who is our speaker today, Sean is our president here at TalentMap. He has over 15 years of experience within the employee engagement sector and working a lot with organizations today to launch some of these job crafting exercises. And some of the things that we're going to share today is some of the things that we'd like for you guys to take home and hopefully launch within your organization. So without any further ado, I'll introduce Sean today. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Neil, and thanks for those who joined us on the webinar today and the opportunity to give you a little bit of an overview as to what job crafting is and how it could be a potentially new tool for your employee engagement toolbox. And if there's any questions or comments on this, you can email me at ffitzpatrick@talentmap.com or Neil Ritchie at talentmap.com. And we can follow up and help you with additional resources and tools that you don't see on this webinar today. I think, first of all, I do want to just touch on who TalentMap is and a little bit of background. For those on the webinar, I know we have some of our clients, which are great. Thank you for joining us. You know us, but there's also some people that haven't worked with us before, so I'll just spend a minute just explaining that, and then we'll jump in. A little bit around TalentMap. We've been in this business of employee research, employee engagement for 15 years, so lots of expertise we've developed. We've done thousands of employee surveys. We probably collect over 1 million employee engagement surveys annually across hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations. And it's really the only focus we have. We really have a focus on helping our clients in key sectors measure and improve employee engagement to create a better work culture and better business performance for our clients. Just a quick snapshot of some of the clients that we work with. This is just a random selection, but I tried to identify up in the top left. You'll see some award programs. We're also, in addition to work we do directly with clients, we do some of the back-end work for Employees' Choice Awards, Canada's Top 100, and so on. What's nice about this, it gives us great exposure to what's going on around employee engagement across the country. So we really know what's happening on top employers out there, not just on organizations in general. We also work with firms in technology, not-for-profit, healthcare, retail, government, financial services, so a number of different core sectors we spend a lot of time on, so lots of exposure there. All right, let me jump into what I want to touch on today. First of all, employee engagement. And I wanted to point out some interesting research from the Conference Board of Canada. You can find this research posted on ft.com, financialtimes.com, and you can actually analyze this. But these are a couple of screenshots from that website. What's critical here is the fact that the top CEO challenges globally is human capital. So human capital is the #1 issue on the minds of executives around the world. It's not customers, innovation, operational excellence, it's human capital. And in fact, whenever we looked at, well, if it's human capital, what is it that's driving this within organizations? And executives plan to use training and development and raising employee engagement are 2 of their tactics that they plan to use to improve human capital assets within the organization. So around the world, employee engagement is important. More close to home in North America, what we looked at was human capital is actually number 2. So it's very high also on CEO's agenda, not just globally. And in fact, whenever we looked at what CEOs plan to do to raise human capital, raising employee engagement was the number 1 issue. So it's an important issue around the world, and it's a real important issue closer to home in North America. CEOs and executives around the world are paying attention to employee engagement more so than ever. I want to point out before I jump into job crafting, because job crafting is really an impact on employee engagement, is job satisfaction and employee engagement are fundamentally 2 different concepts. Job satisfaction is a measure of what employees get in the employment deal. It's much more of what's in it for me as an employee. And that's a measure usually taken through 1 question. Overall, how satisfied are you with your job? And then maybe how satisfied are you with your benefits, your pay, your retirement benefits, and compensation, and so on. Employee engagement, on the other hand, is a measure of, yes, what do you get, but more importantly, it's a measure of your desire to give back to the organization, to the team you work with, or to the customers or clients you serve. An engaged employee is a lot more focused, has a lot more intensity around their task and their work, is a lot more enthusiastic, is a lot more adaptable to the way they manage change. So they are 2 fundamental different factors. Whenever we work with our clients, we actually help create a definition of engagement for those clients. And there's not one standard definition of engagement. You really should adapt it to your strategy and your business model. However, sometimes organizations don't have any definition, so they should start with something. And probably the biggest or most simple definition of employee engagement is it's a measure of discretionary effort. It's a measure of your employees' willingness to provide discretionary effort to their task, to their customers, their clients, to their teammates, and to the organization as a whole. Now, any solid or well-structured employee engagement definition should have 3 fundamental components. You should have a logical component, so you should have a measure or questions that relate to how people feel that they can achieve their career and their financial goals at the organization. You should also have an emotional component in your employment engagement score, an index, and there should be questions around value alignment, how well individuals' values align with their peers, the leadership team or their direct manager, and the organization as a whole. And if we do really well at scoring high on how people are connected logically and emotionally, we're then going to get that behavioral outcome of engagement, or more notably, that discretionary effort. And fundamentally, engagement matters. A lot of you have seen this research already, but engagement drives improvements in a whole range of areas, and that link statistically is significantly stronger than any research that has looked at the link between job satisfaction and business performance. So that's why engagement has taken such a life of its own. It really helps drive better business performance. Higher revenue, higher customer sat scores, better safety records, less lost time, higher productivity, better attendance, less retention, and for the public sector, overall better public confidence with institutions. So there's a lot of real strong benefits for the employer around having an engaged workforce, and that's great. But what about the employee? Well, that's where the magic falls in. Not only is employee engagement important for the employer, it is very important also for the employee. This just outlines some interesting research that shows employee engagement and the impact on your health as an employee. University College of London, 2011, it actually identified employees that felt that they weren't recognized at work had a greater incidence of heart disease. So not being recognized at work can cause higher heart attack and could eventually kill you. So it has a real big influence on your health. There's some famous studies called the White House studies that look at stress. And the underlying concept initially was felt that higher you move up in the organization into management or executive role, the more stress you feel, the lower life expectancy you have. But the opposite was found in these studies. Senior executives, and in fact the higher or more responsibility you have, the lower level of stress you seem to have, and the longer your life expectancy. And the difference between frontline staff that have less autonomy and senior executives that have a lot of autonomy, the discrepancy between life expectancy was significant. And the reason is because having autonomy, you have control over your work life, you have control over your work, which reduces your stress, which reduces incidence of disease and heart attacks and those types of things, which then enable you to live longer. A couple of other studies. This one's really interesting, and I have a list of these. Boston College, a recent study, what it did, it looked at a child's sense of well-being was actually affected by parents that enjoy their work. So children had a higher sense of well-being if their parents were engaged at work than those parents that were disengaged. Those children had a lower sense of well-being. So not only is engagement important to the employer, it's critically important to the employee. So that's why it's really a beneficial win on both sides of the equation. Now let's take a look at the drivers of engagement. And this model outlines TalentMap's standard survey for employee engagement. What we do anytime we deploy the survey, we measure engagement, and those are 6 questions. We measure how people are logically and rationally or emotionally connected to their job or their work, which drives discretionary effort. But below that, our model really follows Maslow's hierarchy. And the concept is you better provide the base needs, comp, safe work environment, professional growth opportunities, got to know how I stand relative to my manager, so my feedback. And then we move into higher level needs, how well we socialize, how well we share information, have some kind of balance. And then into the upper level needs, which how well do we improve the way we do our business, how well do we focus on our customer. The bottom of the pyramid is the leadership team. Whenever we work with organizations, we're able to identify the drivers of engagement and rank those drivers top to bottom. And when we looked at all of our organizations that we've surveyed over the last 5 years, what we found was the #1 driver of employee engagement was professional growth opportunities. Number 2 was org vision. Number 3 was perceptions of senior leadership. You'll notice compensation doesn't even fall in the top 3. So professional growth was actually #1. People wanted to learn and grow professionally. They wanted to be challenged. They wanted to develop more skills. They wanted to be able to stay abreast of what's happening in the workplace so they're good at their job and they feel good about what they do. So with that in mind, we started to realize that there's probably some tools that HR could use, and one of it's job crafting, and I'll talk about that in just a bit. But when we talk about professional growth, here's the questions that we ask around professional growth in the workplace. Challenging work, opportunities to do what I do best every day. Am I leveraging my strengths? I have opportunities to learn and grow professionally. Do I get to work on and opportunities to try new things or learn new things? My career aspirations can be achieved. Do I feel like I want to stay here and I want to invest myself in this organization because there's a future for me, there's hope for me with respect to my career, and I can make an impact. The feeling at the end of the day that I had a difference or I can make a difference. Those are the core engagement questions, personal growth questions that we ask to generate a personal growth score. And as I showed in the last slide, personal growth is the #1 driver across all industries and all sizes of companies that impact engagement the most. So we want to focus there. Let me explain why maybe professional growth or professional growth is such an important driver now of employee engagement. I thought this image was interesting. It's an image of the 1970s, and it shows a cube farm, people working away. And why I show this is because it's the beginning of a longitudinal study. This study actually looked at the question of meaningful work. It asked people whether or not they had meaningful work in their job. And in 1970, less than 1/4 of the population responded saying that they expect some kind of meaningful outcome or meaningful input into their life from their work. Most people just wanted a paycheck. They didn't expect a lot of meaning from their work. Well, click ahead to today, 2014, and that same study showed that that number has moved from less than 1/4 to almost 70%. So in 1970, only 23% expected meaningful work. Now, 67% expect meaningful work. So the perception of what I get out of work and what I want out of work has fundamentally changed among society out there. And that's not just in North America. We see this phenomena worldwide. Incidentally, What Color is Your Parachute, which is a Bible on creating meaning in work, was first published in 1970, and it's just gone through its almost 30th edition now in 2014. So I thought that was interesting. So now let's move to job crafting. First of all, job crafting touches on something I think that's a universal truth around all humans. One is when an individual's turned on to one's work, it's really more intrinsic motivation, things that are driven internally, not externally. And it's because you feel that you're really doing that job well and it has meaning for you, not because you're being paid to do it. So intrinsic motivation is one of the underlying drivers around job crafting. It's one of the fundamentals that we believe people can be intrinsically motivated if their work or job is set up properly. And the other underlying factor around job crafting is driven in part by the job characteristics model. This model has been around for quite a few years, and it was studied, and what it did is it looked at the fact that people are motivated if they have skill variety, they get to do different things, they have task identity, they can relate to their task, they have task significance, they could actually feel that their tasks in the job is important somehow, they had autonomy or flexibility, and they receive feedback. So this job characteristics is found at various levels in all jobs out there. Some people have more autonomy, some have less, some have more skill variety, some have less, but that's the fundamentals. It's looking at this job characteristics model and starting to turn it on its head. So now let's jump to job crafting. When I talk about job crafting, what I'm referring to, it's really the physical and cognitive changes, so how people actually make changes to their work, both the tasks that they do and the way they think about their work. And the formal definition is the physical and cognitive changes individuals make in the task or relational boundaries of their work. Relational boundaries could be people that you relate to, the types of tasks that you do. So it's making actual changes in your job. Not necessarily how the job's designed, but trying to make it that suits you better. And I'll explain in just a bit. A little bit more around the concept of job crafting. Typically, job crafting exercise involves three things. One, task crafting. Two, relationship crafting. And three, cognitive crafting. So let me explain that a little bit. First, I'll start with task crafting. Task crafting is really changing the activities involved in your job by either taking on more tasks or fewer tasks or expanding some tasks or diminishing some tasks or alternating the tasks and somehow that really meets your style a little bit better. And I think what's interesting today is today's technology is enabling us to perform tasks in so many different ways. There's not just one way to perform a task. Now there's multiple of different ways to perform a task, and the technology is allowing us to find ways that allow to really suit our needs. I give you an example there. An accountant trying to create a new filing method of taxes to make their job less repetitive, or a machine operator volunteering to design a logo in their company. That's where they're taking on or doing different tasks so their job they engage more in their work and their job. So some very simple things around task crafting. Another part of job crafting is relationship crafting. And that's really changing the extent or the nature of your interactions with other people, either increasing certain interactions or decreasing certain interactions. I'll give you an example. A computer technician offering to help coworkers as a way to have more social connections. So in their work, maybe they had less social and they're very social. How do they involve that? So that's adapting the ways, or a financial analyst commuting with clients using video conference rather than just email. So making small changes in how they relate to people can in fact impact their engagement. And then finally, cognitive crafting is the third component of job crafting, and that's changing the way you think about the purpose of the task, the relationship, or the job as a whole. A real good example provided here, hospital cleaner, seeing his work as a means to helping people get better, as opposed to just cleaning the floor or emptying bedpans. Or an insurance agent viewing her job as working to get people back on track after a car accident, rather than simply processing insurance claims. So it's thinking of their job in a different way. So job crafting really takes into account the tasks, the relationships, and the thinking around the job. Now what I want to do is walk you through what we call a job crafting exercise. Job crafting exercise has 3 core steps. The first step is pretty straightforward. It's really mapping yourself and understanding, first of all, what you value, and identifying those values are most important to you, and a handful of values are all you need. What your strengths are. You know, do you like working with people? Do you like working with machines? Do you like organized and filing things? Do you like working on concepts and ideas? So understanding your strengths. And then also identifying the passion. Things that you're really interested about. Things that you tend to do that you would do whether or not you're being paid, like teaching others or learning the latest technology are some examples. So that's the first step in any job crafting exercise. The second step is then identifying the task blocks, the areas where you spend most of your time today. So in this example, this is a doctor seeing patients at the office. That's where they spend most of their time. The second column is where they spend a medium amount of time, so doing hospital rounds, learning new techniques to stay on top of trends. And then where they spend the least amount of time. And you'll often see there's sort of an 80-20 rule here. A lot of little tasks, though, they're done, you know, very quickly, and then 1 or 2 big tasks that make up the bulk of their job. So it's really mapping out their task blocks and identifying what those tasks are, usually by the amount of time invested in a week or a day in doing that work. And then step 3 is putting those 2 concepts together, the tasks, the values, the strengths, and their passion, and creating what we call role frames. Role frames are reconfiguring those tasks that allow you to affect roles that you want to, or that speak best to you in terms of improving your engagement. So in this particular example of the doctor, the role to make a positive difference in patients' lives and how he or she goes about does that, to educate others, that's a role that they want to continue to play, how he or she does that and how they configure their tasks to do that, and develop themselves personally and professionally. So those are the 3 big roles they want to do, and what they want then, and what they did in this exercise, is recraft their tasks and reorganize by increasing or decreasing some of the tasks, changing the relationships in terms of people that they work with by expanding or diminishing those, and also reframing it or rethinking about their role in a different way in terms of the cognitive aspect. When we've done this exercise with different organizations, it's taken us about 6 weeks to drive engagement and effectiveness, which is important. It's not just being engaged, but also is it being more effective in the way they do their work. This is results from a study Prior to running job crafting exercise, the level of engagement was low. After 6 weeks running the job crafting exercise, people actually changed the way they worked and recrafted, rethought, and reorganized themselves. And 6 weeks later, their level of engagement had increased significantly, and their feeling of overall effectiveness had gone up a lot. So job crafting can have a very big impact on engagement at the front line, at the management level, and even at the executive level. Just to wrap up here, I wanted to point out a couple of areas where you might get some coverage, media coverage on job crafting. So this is stuff that's been published over the last 12 months or so. Stuff at Google, stuff at Business Week, Time, Fast Company. So an ongoing barge of media out there are starting to pick up on what this concept is and how the tools can be used. And then finally, in this presentation, there's also some additional job crafting resources where we pulled some of this information, as well as where you might want to read and learn more around people that are thinking about job crafting in more detail at the academic sense. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to turn it over to Neil. I think there's a couple of questions that came through, and then we'll just briefly talk about what's coming next at TalentMap, and I'll turn it over to Neil now.
Yeah, great, Sean. Thank you. I appreciate you walking us through that. Hopefully, this information shared today is something that you guys can take back within your organization and sort of implement, and hopefully this new information from the University of Michigan will be something that will be able to benefit you guys going forward. So yeah, just a few questions came in, and let me start. We had a question come in on workshops, wondering if we do any type of job crafting workshops.
Yeah, it's a great question, and yes, we do. It's a new field for us, and in fact, the concepts are fairly new in terms of how they're being modeled out and thought. But yeah, we have run a number of those and are starting to run those more and more with our clients, both the ones we survey with, as well as ones that we haven't surveyed, but they want to use the tool or try the tool out. It's a fantastic exercise. People come out of that very, very pumped and very excited about how they think about their work differently, but they're still able to get their tasks done. So it's not around stopping jobs or tasks that have to get done. It's around rethinking and reformulating so that the tasks mean more or the job means more to the individual.
Great, thank you. One of the other questions that came in is in regards to the effects and the benefits that job crafting actually has on teamwork. And I know that job crafting, in a sense, could be an individual exercise, but how does it also unite the individuals in regards to overall teamwork improvement and engagement in that sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I did focus today on job crafting at the individual level, but as Neil asks, or as this question came in, it can also be done very well at the team level. And in fact, an exercise that we've done is work both at the individual level and then pulled the job crafting group together, the group that ran through the job crafting exercise at the team level, so then they can start to think about not just if I'm changing my job and relationships and tasks at the individual level, how does it impact at the larger team level for that immediate manager? And it not only drives engagement individually, but also can drive better team engagement and overall better performance. So there is definitely a relationship between the individual working on recrafting his or her job and how it can impact in a positive way teams in terms of trying to get the job overall task done of the business unit or group.
Perfect. And just one more question that came in, and this came in from an organization that currently does job crafting exercises, and some of the things that they've received a lot of really good feedback, and they actually really love the exercise going through. Going forward for organizations that haven't done any job crafting exercises, how would you share this to the employees? What type of information would you share as a manager looking down to or sharing down information to an employee? How would you share this to an employee as a beneficial exercise for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. That one of the concerns might be that, oh, you're redesigning my job and you're trying to make me redundant and so on. And so it's important how to position job crafting, that it's really a tool to do two things. One is to make individuals more effective and to engage them more. So it has to be making sure that one concern employees might have is, are you making me redundant? So it's important for managers at the outset to identify their intent and how they want to use this tool, and how we've seen this tool used most effectively in not trying to use it to make people redundant or design people out of a job, but to help people focus on where their strengths are and to focus on the areas where they can have the biggest impact on is still achieving the tasks or goals of the organization, but in a way that suits them in a more meaningful light.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean, and thank you for everybody for joining us. Hopefully this information on job crafting is something you guys can take back in the workplace, and will be relevant information for you guys going forward. Just to wrap up, let me just walk you through some of the things that we have going forward here at TalentMap. If you enjoyed this month's webinar, hopefully you can take a chance to join us on our next monthly webinar on October 2nd. We'll be talking a little bit about understanding the work-life balance. We'll be sharing about that with Norm Valley-David, our Senior Vice President here at TalentMap, and he has a wealth of experience in regards to that in the information that he's sharing there. So hopefully that's something that you guys can participate in and join us next month on October 2nd. In wrap-up, thanks again for joining us, and hopefully we can see you next month at our monthly webinar. Thank you.
And thanks, Neil.
To contact us, or to learn more, just Google TalentMap, or simply click on the link below.